All right, good afternoon, Liberty North AP Psych. Today is Wednesday, September 16th, and this is your first virtual Wednesday of the 2020 school year. So I hope it's been a good day for everybody. I know there's been several technology glitches throughout the day, Zoom and Chrome. So I hope that ends up being an okay day for you guys. And again, if you struggled and you're watching this late, don't worry about it. Just make sure you get the information because it's pretty important today. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about psychology's major approaches and perspectives. There you go. Bell. Okay. That's the start of 6th hour. So what I'm going to have you do, if you want to, but just so you know where you can get this information. First of all, it is on page 12 of your textbook. Okay. So if you want to go to the online textbook, it's on page 12. And if you notice, they've got a nice big chart for you on the top half of the page. And what you have is you have your perspectives listed over there. You got your kind of focus or definition right here, and then kind of questions that you might use to kind of glean insight into each perspective. Okay. So the book does a pretty good job of giving you the information that you need. All right, so you can obviously copy this chart into your AP notebook, but it has to be handwritten. Okay, I am also going to use a chart that I have up on the board behind here because I've added some historical names that I think that I want you to have. So just a second, and I will get you there. Okay. All right. So, and this will be on the board tomorrow. So we'll kind of look at it briefly at the beginning of class just to review. And I know that there is a glare on the screen, but there's no glare here. But on the YouTube, there's a glare right there, probably from my camera. I think it is. It's the green light from my camera. Okay. Now, also if you go to Canvas under announcements, under the history doc that we used yesterday, you've got the important dates. You've got important names. And then at the bottom of that, there are the perspectives. I list the 5 major perspectives. Okay. So the book has 7. I have combined their 7 into I've been in psychology for a long time, so I'm kind of one of the older people, but I'm going to use the 5 major perspectives. Okay. That are kind of the historic beginnings. Okay. All right. And then the other 2 that the book has, I've put them under 2 of the historical perspectives. Okay. All right. Now, also, we are going to be answering learning target number 3 and number 4. Okay. Of unit 1. Now, again, as you're reading these, so basically we're going to summarize the major perspectives and approaches in psychology. And then we're going to answer number 4, which is then we're going to discuss limitations to applying those approaches and perspectives to behavior. Okay. Now, I wouldn't put the answers or this chart under learning target 3 and 4. Okay. I would put it in your AP notebook under your 1 section that is required for the perspectives of psychology. Okay. So for 3 and 4, I just put C perspectives chart. All right. Because again, 1/5 of your notebook is the perspectives, which we're going to knock out today. All right. It'll be over today. So you'll reference it as we move on, and you'll need it for future quizzes, and we will refer back to it quite a bit, but you'll have the perspectives already done. So you'll have 1/5 of your notebook already done after today. Okay. All right. So I would just, again, make a page for perspectives of psychology in your AP notebook, and then put one of the charts in there. Okay. So I'm going to go over this one. I'll go down at the top, and I did do them in order of the book. Okay. So it should follow the book and its little chart. Okay. All right. So let's start at the top. So page 12 up there is where the chart is, perspectives, approaches, and psych. Okay. Number 1 I have is behavioral, which is also number 1 in the book. Okay. So your behavioral perspective seeks to explain human behavior and thinking based on environmental factors. Okay. So what in our environment impacts who we are and how we behave? Now, it also looks at our experiences in the environment and observable behavior that we have in the environment. But the key word is environment, okay? So nobody's going to disagree that our environment influences our behavior and thinking, okay? And that's where behavioral people put their focus in, is on that environmental factor, right? Some important names. So if you notice, I've got the perspective, keywords that I'll use throughout the year, and then important figures, historical figures with each one, okay? So these figures do not need to go in your AP notebook under names. You can just leave them here, okay? All right. And I'm trying to move this so that my microphone gets a little better if you can't hear me. All right, so John B. Watson, who is the father of behaviorism, and then B.F. Skinner, who is rated the #1 most influential psychologist of all time by the APA. We'll watch The Truman Show for Unit 2, and his writings are kind of the basis of that, okay? All right, now, the book has sociocultural as its own separate perspective, okay? I have put it under behavioral because the sociocultural perspective just looks at how our culture and society influences our behavior, okay? Now, our culture and society are part of our overall environment. So our overall environment is all-encompassing. It's very large, okay? So our culture and society are parts of that environment. They're just going to look at certain aspects of our environment, which is our culture and our society, okay? Now, if you want a great example of how culture and society influence behavior, you could look at COVID-19, okay? So obviously culture and society has been forever changed, altered. We have new and unique behaviors, new and unique thought processes, and those go throughout the world, throughout our country, okay? So COVID-19 is a great example of a specific culture-specific item that's influencing our behavior. But overall, it's still an environmental factor that's influencing our behavior, okay? Number 2 is biological, all right? And I will tell you, a lot of people get these confused for a while, so make sure you work out the difference because they both start with B, so they interfere with each other in your memory, all right? So biological is going to look at any biological factor that influences our behavior. So any biological process. Now, in psychology, we're specifically going to look at the brain, nervous system. We'll look at the endocrine system. We'll look at hormones, neurotransmitters, genetics, okay? Any of those impacts on our behavior, okay? The book wants you to know Charles Darwin as kind of being the pioneer. He wasn't a psychologist. He was a scientist, okay, but laid the groundwork for that. Now, the book has evolutionary perspective as its own perspective. Again, I have put it under biological because that's where it fits. So evolutionary perspective simply looks at natural selection and genetics. Okay, what genes have high adaptive value that I'm passing on that cause us to have innate predisposed behaviors and thoughts, okay? Now, that's true. We do have predisposed behaviors and thoughts, but they're still from genes. They're still from genetics, which would be biological, okay? So we're going to leave that underneath number 2. All right, number 3 is cognitive, all right? Cognitive psychology. The cognitive perspective looks at our thought processes, our thinking. Okay, again, cognition means thinking. So we're going to look at thinking and mental processes influences on how we behave. In other words, how we view the world, how we think about the world around us. I think several publications and authors have often stated that all of us have unhealthy thought processes that we probably need to have analyzed and changed. And those thought processes influence our behavior and who we are. So you can actually change the way you think. Therapy can help you do that. You can do that on your own. Okay, but that's what they're going to look at. Jean Piaget, which we've already talked about, who the APA voted as the 2nd most influential psychologist of all time. And then Beck and Ellis are more contemporary psychologists that we'll talk about, especially when we get to therapy. But when you do your journal critique assignments and you research your journal, your psychological journal, Beck is often used as materials, measurements, the Beck Depressive Scale. I mean, he's pretty prominent, so you'll probably run into him. Okay. Number 4 is humanistic perspective, right, which believes that we're all on a quest for growth, fulfillment, and actualization. So we spend our life, and we kind of have a predisposed, if you will, innate desire to have self-growth, self-fulfillment, and self-actualization. Okay, our prominent two are Maslow and Rogers. A lot of you identified Maslow yesterday as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's actually a great blueprint for humanistic psychology. So the idea is that I'm moving up the pyramid, I'm growing, I'm fulfilling the needs as I go. And then at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization, which is my unique potential. My desire and my goal is to fulfill my unique potential, okay? And if I am not growing, if I'm not moving towards self-actualization, I'm stuck, I'm moving backwards, then I start to have issues, okay? All right? All right, so with humanistic self-growth, self-fulfillment, self-actualization are the main influence on my behavior and thinking. Okay, psychoanalytic is number 5. And underneath it, I have psychodynamic, which is not actually in the book on page 12. This is kind of the contemporary term for psychoanalytic. So basically, they're synonymous, but this is often used more today than the original psychoanalytic term. So both of them emphasize the unconscious. So how does our unconscious mind or unconscious thoughts and processes influence our behavior? Your historical names, again, are Sigmund Freud, which we talked about yesterday. He's the 3rd most influential psychologist of all time, according to the APA. Jung, who was a protege of Freud, okay? Now, really, the big difference is they both emphasize how does the unconscious mind influence our behavior. But psychodynamic really likes to emphasize on our childhood experiences. So what from our childhood might be negative or traumatic that unconsciously is affecting us today at an older age, okay? So if you have any trauma, if you have any negative experiences from your childhood, they believe that those stay with you in your unconscious mind until you resolve them. So kind of a combination of the two, but the main focus is on unconscious thinking, okay? All right, 2 that we need to add, which we did talk about yesterday as being the first 2 theories in psychology, are functionalism and structuralism, okay? Now, neither one of these exists today because they have actually morphed or were kind of taken into 3 different perspectives that we have, okay? Let's start with structuralism, which was founded by Wundt and Titchener. And the root word of each of these theories actually tells you what they viewed as the main component. Structuralism looked at thought, and it wanted to look at the structure of thought. It wanted to break down our thinking into all its fundamental elements. And what they believed is that if you kind of mapped out your stream of consciousness and all your thinking and kept track of it, you would find the impacts on your behavior and on your thinking, okay? So now that is actually been morphed into the 2 perspectives that emphasize thinking, okay? Conscious thought is in the cognitive perspective, which is really more aligned with structuralism because psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic perspective with Freud was just starting to gain popularity when Wundt and Titchener created structuralism, okay? But we didn't still at that point in history have a worldwide view of the unconscious mind and how it could influence us, okay? So really structuralism in its origin would be more like cognitive, okay? Mapping out my cognitive, my conscious thinking. But now we also know that there are some unconscious thinking that we also need to map out and keep track of because that influences us, okay? So structuralism was structure of thinking. You know, break our thinking, our thought processes down to elemental forms, and we'll try an activity. We'll do an activity with introspection tomorrow in class, okay? And then the other one was functionalism, which was from William James. Function is the root word, and actually James believed that all behavior had a fundamental purpose or function that it served. Now, he believed that that purpose and function was found in the environment, okay, which is why functionalism was merged into behaviorism, okay? All right. So what is the function of behavior? What is the structure of my thinking? All right. Okay. All right. So that's number 3. And then to answer number 4. Okay. So number 3 is what are the major perspectives and approaches? We've got 5. All right. And then number 4 is how do these what are the limitations of these perspectives in explaining behavior? Okay. And the simple answer is right down here. Okay, we need an eclectic or combination approach when we're seeking to truly understand behavior and thinking, whether it's for clinical purposes or research purposes. We need to look at behavior and thinking by all 5 perspectives. Okay, if we just focus on one, we're not going to get the whole picture. So if I am a behaviorist and I only look at environmental factors, I have missed all these other factors that probably give me a much clearer, concise, comprehensive view of behavior and thinking. Okay, so now a great example was when I graduated in 1998 with my master's in marriage and family therapy. Back at that time, you actually picked which perspective you liked, and you kind of really made that your emphasis and your focus on your therapy techniques. I chose cognitive behavioral. Okay, so basically I use cognitive and behavioral therapy, and I really looked at and focused on the cognitive and behavioral factors that led to families or people being unhealthy. Okay, so I really looked at what kind of unhealthy thoughts do they have, and then how does their environment negatively impact them. Okay, now, still very successful therapy today, cognitive behavioral therapy is, and it helps millions of people every year to get better and to heal. But I'm still missing 3 of the 5 perspectives. I'm missing out if there's any genetic or biological factors, if there's any self-growth or self-fulfillment factors, or if there's any unconscious factors. Okay, so today, if you were to graduate with your master's in therapy, whether it be marriage and family or your LPC, licensed professional counselor, you have to know all of the perspectives and to be able to help people with every aspect of behavior and thinking. So you basically perform therapy from any of the 5 that's needed. That way you're able to help more people, okay? And you're not limited to just one aspect, okay? Again, we'll refer to the environment quite a bit. The environment impacts you, okay? It does, okay? But so does your biology, so does your thinking, so does your need for self-growth, and so does your unconscious mind. So to really get an eclectic, overall correct picture of behavior and thinking, again, whether it's clinical or research, I need to do it from all 5, okay? So the short answer to number 4 is that, using only one or a few perspectives greatly limits my ability to understand behavior and thinking. I need to look at it from all 5 perspectives and use that eclectic approach, okay? All right, so that is the notes for today. So we have finished learning target 3 and 4. You've actually got your perspective section of your AP notebook done. And then tomorrow and Friday, we will finish learning target number 5, okay? Which is basically careers in psychology. All right, if you have any questions, email me. I will see you guys all either Thursday or Friday, and have a great virtual Wednesday.